The objective for this video is to compute the standard deviation for a set of data. The problem that we're focusing on is the number of highway miles per gallon of the 7 worst vehicles in some unnamed dealership. And the values that we're given to work with are listed. And we're going to go through the formula first and then look at how to do this also in the calculator. So to begin with, standard deviation is based on the mean for the distribution. So we need to find x bar, the mean. And to find the mean, as you recall, we just add up the numbers 12, 15, 13, 14, 15, 13, 16, and then divide by the number 7. So we're adding up all these numbers and dividing by 7, and it just works out that the mean is 14. Then our next step in our list of data here is to subtract each one of these. We're going to take and subtract the mean from each one. So I'll make another column heading here, x minus x bar. So 12 minus 14, this is a -2, and 1, -1, 0, 1, -1, and 2. Then our next step in our formula for standard deviation is to square these differences. So we need a column that does that, x minus x bar, and we're going to square each one of those. Because our formula for the standard deviation looks like this. The standard deviation, S, equals the square root of the sum of x minus x bar, quantity squared, and all that's being divided by n minus 1, where n is the number of elements in the set. So in our next column here, we're just squaring all these differences. So that's going to give us 4 and 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, and 4. Now notice here the top part of the formula says that we need to sum these squared differences. So we're going to add up this column, and that total is, what is that, 12? Okay. So now our value for the standard deviation is equal to 12 divided by the number of elements in this data set was 7. So 7 minus 1 is 6. And we're going to take the square root of all of that. So we're looking at taking the square root of 2 and doing that in our calculator. To get the square root, we have to use the second function, x squared. That gives us the square root key of 2, and enter. So our approximation here for this would be about 1.414. I'm just going to round this off. Now, that's the way we would find the standard deviation by hand. Find the mean first, subtract each value x, subtract the mean, square those differences, then we want to add up the differences squared, subtract or divide by n minus 1, and then take the square root of the whole expression. Now we can also do this in our calculator. Now, it's a little less work. So if we go over here to our calculator, and I'm going to clear this out and look at putting my information in a list. So I'm going to go to Stat, just like we did earlier with the mean and median and such, and select Edit and put in our data. 12, 13, 15, go back to the stat function under stat, and we've got our list, so now we want to calculate. So we're going to arrow to the right and calculate one variable stat. So press enter. And the list that we're using is list 1. And notice up here on the frequency list, we're just listing those values, so we don't have a frequency list. So we're just arrowing down to calculate, press enter, and our mean ends up being 14. As we read through this information here, notice we've got two values for the standard deviation. The first one being S sub x. Well, the S sub x is the standard deviation of a sample. So we're looking at this problem here as being a sample, and we computed that, and notice the answer is the same thing that we got when we did this by hand. The second standard deviation is sigma sub x, and that's whenever we're trying to figure out the standard deviation of a population. And the one difference in the formula for a population standard deviation is the denominator. So instead of dividing by n minus 1, for a population standard deviation, you would be dividing by n, the total number of items in the set. And that's how we calculate standard deviation.